All right, so it's now recording. So thank you again, class, for joining this class discussion for today. So we are now going to discuss a next chapter of our subject. So yung topic natin or topic for today is about internal control framework. So syempre meron na kayong idea what is operational auditing. So alam nyo na yon, hindi na natin siya uulitin. Na-discuss din natin yung approach ng auditor pagdating sa audit. So risk-based approach. Napag-aralan din natin yung risk assessment and risk management. How do we assess risk? Siyempre, identify natin, then we measure, and then we analyze. And then napag-aralan din natin the last previous weeks uh, kung paano yung phases ng isang operational audit. Siyempre, magpaplano tayo, we do the audit fieldwork, we do the reporting, and then we also need to get feedback from the uh, unit or team subject for audit. So, napag-aralan na natin yan. So, now let's go in the internal control framework. So, ano nga ba yung internal control framework, class? If anyone from the class, ano kaya yung internal control framework from your own? Can you still hear me? Can you hear me, class?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po.
Mm-hmm. So ano kaya yung internal control? Internal control muna. Ano yung internal control? Based on your own understanding, what is an internal control? So ano kaya ang internal control? This one, ayan. Ano kaya ang internal control?
Sir, ito po yung ginagawa para ma-control yung risk.
Yes, no? So tama si Janine. So yung internal control, these are controls, di ba? Controls, sorry, to control the risk, di ba? Controls the risk. So internal controls are control measures that controls risks. So ano yung mga risks na nakokontrol ng internal control or kayang pababain, kayang paliitin ng internal control? Anong klase ng risk yung kaya nilang i-control ng internal control? So anyone from the class? Ano kaya yung klase ng risk na yon? Napag-aralan natin yan, di ba? So anong klase ng risk yon? Ang tawag natin doon sa risk na kayang kontrolin, controllable risk. So yung kayang-kaya na kontrolin ng internal control or kayang-kayang pababain, iwasan, ang mga tawag doon sa risk na yon ay controllable risks. Ayan, so lagay ko lang dyan. Controllable risk. Ayan, controllable risks. Ayan. All right. So, only those controllable risks yung mga kayang pababain, alisin, tanggalin, or kayang i-prevent ng internal control. So other than that, hindi yon controllable risk like inherent risk. Or yung iba man, kayang pababain, pero nakalusot pa rin yung risk. Ang tawag naman doon ay residual risk. So yung mga residual risk, ito yung mga dumaan sa internal control processes pero nakalusot pa rin, pero mas maliit na yung kanyang impact. So residual risk naman yun. All right. Okay. So why control? Bakit kaya natin kailangan mag-control? Bakit kaya kailangan mag-control sa isang business or isang organization? Class, can you hear me? Why do we need to control or to implement controls in an organization? On your own opinion. Anyone? Napapakinggan pa po ba ako? Yes, Erica.
Kailangan po ng internal control para po magkaroon ng assurance regarding the achievement of objectives ng organization po.
Alright, no? So tama 'yon. Achievement ng objective. So kasi meron tayong tinatawag na mga objectives, 'di ba? So these objectives kailangan ma-achieve natin bilang isang organization. So kapag hindi natin ma-attain or ma-achieve itong objectives na ito, therefore, yung internal control natin hindi effective. Kasi yun nga yung pinaka-purpose natin to attain these objectives. So, syempre, there are other factors why do we need to implement controls in an organization. Una, to address, 'di ba? We have to address the risk, 'di ba? So, syempre, kung wala tayong ini-implement na internal control processes sa isang organization, we cannot identify what is that risk or what are those risks na nag-i-exist or nandoon sa isang organization. So with the proper internal control, malalaman natin ano ba yung mga risks na nandoon. Ano ba yung mga risks na gustong i-penetrate yung isang business. Nakukuha po ba? So we have to identify ano yung klase ng risk. So that's why we implement internal control to address ano yung mga risk. Ikalawa, to safeguard the assets. Siyempre, yun yung purpose natin, di ba, bilang auditor, to safeguard the assets of the company. Kasi kung hindi tayo mag-i-implement ng internal control, possible or susceptible yung mga assets sa pagkawala, 'di ba? Mawala, masira, manakaw. So, uh, our purpose of internal control and accounting control is for those assets and resources uh, na ma-prevent sa pagkawala, pagkasira, 'di ba? Na unintentional na pagkasira or intentional na pagkawala kasi pwedeng kunin, 'di ba? So, yun yung isa sa purpose ng internal control, to safeguard the assets. Ikatlo naman is to check the risk appetite of the organization. Yung organization, kaya ba nila nung ganitong klase ng risk? Yung ibang risk, acceptable ba sa kanila or hindi acceptable? Kasi syempre depende sa organization kung ano yung mga risk na kaya nilang uh, i-ignore na, oh sige, okay lang yan, wala naman siyang financial impact sa atin or wala naman siyang operational impact yung risk na ito. So it's better na just to ignore it kasi wala naman. Diba? Sooner or later, mawawala rin siya. So, depende sa risk appetite nung business. Ngayon, yung iba kasing mga organization, kapag malalaki yung organization, meron silang tinatawag na risk appetite for compliance. So, mga compliance risks, kapag maliit lang yung babayaran na penalty, sabihin nila, sige, okay na yan, hayaan mo na yan. Kaysa sa mag-comply tayo, masyadong burden. So, yun yung sinasabi ng iba. Masyadong burden na sa atin, burdensome sa part natin, tapos babayaran natin yung isang professional mas malaki pa kaysa sa ma-i-incur nating penalty. So sabihin nila, sige magbayad na lang tayo ng penalty. So syempre, ganun yung risk appetite ng ibang business. May iba namang business or organization na yung kanilang principle or kanilang cultural values, ang sinasabi nila, kailangan fully compliant. Diba? Kailangan fully compliant tayo. So regardless whether it's a small or large penalty, as much as possible, fully compliant tayo. So syempre, ang risk appetite nila, medyo conservative sila. Kahit gaano kaliit or kalaki yung penalty, penalty is penalty para sa kanila. So yun naman yung risk appetite ng ibang business. So syempre, if you will work with an organization, it could be a multinational organization or a traditional corporation or a modern or dynamic organization. So, syempre doon yung maiintindihan ano ba yung mga risk appetites ng isang organization. Ayan. So, ganun po yan. Like for example, punta tayo kay RTU. Pag pumunta tayo kay RTU, pag pumasok tayo sa school. Pag pumasok tayo sa school, ano yung unang bubungad sa atin, class?
Yung guard po.
Yung guard. Nakukuha po ba? So tama yun. Yung guard yung unang bubungad sa atin. So ibig sabihin, yung guard ay isang part ng internal control ng school. Nakukuha po ba? So nag-agree ba kayo na part ng internal control ng school ang mga guards? You
Yes
still
po.
agree, Mikas? Alright. Okay, so onti lang yung nakikinig yata sa atin. Okay, so far parang tatlo lang ata nakikinig. Alright. So, yung guard, part sila ng internal control ng school. Kasi kapag walang guard, ano mangyayari sa school kapag walang guard? Sa tingin niyo?
May mga papasok
Magulo
yung
po.
ibang tao.
Yes, may papasok na ibang tao, magiging magulo kasi syempre kung sino-sino nalang papasok doon. May papasok na hindi estudyante, may papasok na estudyante, may papasok na professor, may papasok na magpapanggap na professor. 'Di ba? So kung sino-sino na lang yung makikita natin doon. Mamaya may pumasok pa doon na street children, 'di ba? Street children o kaya yung taong palaboy. Kasi walang nagko-control, walang nagse-safeguard nung premises. Kaya merong guard, 'di ba? So, yun yung isang internal control procedure or process na ini-implement ng school para maprotektahan yung assets, ma-safeguard yung assets, yung resources nung uh, organization. Sa tingin nyo kapag walang guard doon, makikita nyo pa ba yung ulo ni Rizal doon sa labas, doon sa may circle? Di ba may circle doon sa may ano, or wala nang circle doon? Ay, nasaan na ba yung ulo ni Rizal doon? Nandun pa rin pa ba? Di ba? So, ganyan. Or another one, yung mga chairs doon, mga lamesa, kung walang guard na nandiyan, nakabantay, syempre kung sino-sino na lang yung pwedeng maglabas nung lamesa, ng upuan, ng blackboard or whiteboard. So, kahit ano pwedeng ilabas. Kung plantito ka, plantita, yung pumasok doon, plantito or plantita, pwede na lang kung ano-anong kinukuhang halaman doon sa loob ng school. So, ito yung mga klase ng internal control na usual nating nakikita. So, aware tayo na may ganyan, na may guard, tapos sila yung nag-filter ng mga pumapasok. So, syempre ngayon, ini-elaborate natin na, ito pala ay klase ng internal control. So, syempre kayo bilang mga accountants, accounting students, aware kayo na ito ay klase ng internal control. So, bakit? To address the risk. Ano yung risk doon? Possible kapag walang guard. Ano kaya yung risk na possible doon kapag walang guard?
Safety risk po or security risk.
Yes, no? So tama 'yon, safety risk or security risk. Kasi syempre, maraming estudyante sa loob ng RTU. Syempre hindi natin alam sino yung mga pwedeng pumasok doon. Mamaya merong gustong pumasok na yung uso sa Amerika, 'di ba, yung nambabaril na lang. So, sa school, nambabaril na lang siya ng basta-basta. Siyempre, kung may guard dyan sa school, sa RTU natin, at least kahit papano, safe yung mga estudyante. Plus the gate, di ba? May gate din doon. Kasi kung walang gate, may guard nga, pwedeng makapasok doon sa ibang area. Kung walang bakod, walang gate. Diba? So, yan. To address the risk, to safeguard the assets and other resources, tapos risk appetite. Yung risk appetite naman, sabihin natin si RTU, okay lang kay RTU, mawalan siya ng mga gamit. Kasi ayaw nila mag-hire ng security guard. Medyo mahal daw yung mga security guard. So sabi nila, okay lang yan, kahit mawala na yan, pwede namang mapalitan yan, mag-donate naman yung Mandaluyong government. So that's their risk appetite. no? So kung okay lang sa kanila mawalan sila ng mga gamit, yun yung kanila. Risk appetite nila yon. Pero kung sa kanila ayaw nila, sabihin nila ay government tayo, everything here is accounted. Baka ma-audit tayo ng Commission on Audit. So kapag may nawawala, anong paliwanag natin? Sabihin natin na nakaw. So magagalit yung COA sa atin. Bakit hindi tayo naglalagay ng safeguarding measures doon pa lang sa gate? So, bakit hindi nag-hire ng guards? So, syempre, kung ganon yung thinking ni RTU, ibig sabihin yung risk appetite niya is medyo mababa. Hindi niya kayang may mawala sa kanyang assets or resources. That's why we need to implement internal control. So, these are the reasons. Kasi syempre meron tayong mga objectives. So, ayan. Bakit kailangan ng internal control? To have effectiveness and efficiency of operations. Kasi chine-check natin yung effectiveness and efficiency of operations. Ngayon, yung internal control kasi nakakadagdag yon or nakaka-enhance ng efficiency and effectiveness ng operations. Ikalawa, reliability ng financial reporting. And then ikatlo, compliance with applicable laws, rules, and regulations. So itong tatlo pala na to, kung mapapansin nyo, these are objectives. So objectives yan ng internal control. So nakafocus saan ang internal control? Effectiveness and efficiency ng operation. Ikalawa, reliability of financial reporting. And then ikatlo, compliance with applicable laws and regulation. So tatlo ito. Yan yung kailangan. Bakit kailangan ng internal control? So una, for operation. Ikalawa, for financial reporting. At ikatlo, for compliance. So these three, itong tatlong ito, dito nag-come up for the objectives ng isang internal control. So ano yung mga objectives ng internal control? We have three objectives. Operational objective, financial reporting objective, saka compliance objective. So kung babalikan natin, 'di ba? Why there is a need? Bakit daw kailangan ang internal control? Kasi nga daw, mini-measure natin yung efficiency and effectiveness ng operation. Kaya siya naging operational objective. Ano pa? We have to check the reliability of financial reporting. Kaya meron tayong financial reporting objective. And then, last is compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Kaya meron tayong compliance objective. Nakukuha po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes, sir.
Yes
Yes.
Yes.
Siyempre. Okay, balikan natin yung dati nating pinag-aralan sa risk assessment. Dito muna tayo sa operational objective. Sa tingin ninyo, kapag hindi natin na-attain yung operational objective ng isang organization, doon muna tayo sa operational objective. Kapag hindi natin na-attain yung operational objective ng isang organization, ano kaya yung mga risks na pwedeng ma-penetrate ang ating organization? Ano po kaya mga risk na yon? Kung babalikan ninyo, kung babalikan natin, yung
Capacity.
risk. Yes, that's correct, no? So, capacity risk. So, pwedeng magkaroon ng capacity risk. So, merong capacity risk pala. Kapag hindi mo na-achieve yung operational objective ng having a good internal control, merong capacity risk doon sa business. Bakit? Kasi syempre, yung operational objective is moving towards the efficiency and effectiveness of the operational function, operational processes. Kung hindi efficient and effective yung operational processes, pwedeng mag-under production or overproduction ng isang organization. So that is subject to capacity risk. Nakukuha po ba? Ano pa kaya? Meron pa po ba? Meron pa po ba kaya, class?
Strategic risk po.
Yes, pwedeng strategic risk, no? So, papasok din dito yung strategic risk. So, syempre, ano yung strategic risk? 'Di ba? Ito yung risk pertaining sa strategy. So, yan. Sulat ko muna dyan. Strategic. Ang pangat ng sulat. Ayan. Strategic risk. So, syempre, kung hindi mo ma-attain ang operational objective ng organization or hindi ma-attain ng internal control mismo yung operational objective ng organization, hindi niya ma-fulfill yung demands ng customers, yung preference ng customers, o kaya yung technical, makasabay sa technological changes. So, syempre, that is considered a strategic risk. No? So, strategic risk po iyon. So, syempre, may expose yung organization or yung company sa strategic risk. Yan. So, yan. Pwede yan isama dyan. Ma-consider as a risk kapag hindi natin masatisfy yung compliance objective. For financial reporting objective, sa tingin nyo, class, ano kaya yung mga risk kapag hindi na-satisfy yung financial reporting objective? Ano yun? Ano kaya yung pwedeng maging risk? Ano kaya mga kalakip na risk dyan kapag hindi ma-achieve yung financial reporting objective?
Integrity risk.
Yes, no? So tama din yon. Integrity risk. Ayan, so lagay ko muna dyan. Ayan. Integrity risk. Ano pa?
Strategic risk po.
Yes, that's correct, no? So integrity. Yan. So integrity risk kasama din doon. Ayan. Kasi syempre, kung hindi kaya sa financial reporting yung isang organization, syempre pwedeng ma-impair yung integrity ng organization na, uy, para may tinatago kayo, hindi kayo up to date sa pagbibigay ng financial reporting. Bakit punong-puno ba ng error yung financial reports ninyo? Or punong-puno ba ng fraud yung transactions? Kaya gusto nyo ayusin pa siya na maigi para hindi makita. So, kaya pwedeng maapektuhan yung integrity ng corporation or ng organization. Subject din siya sa strategic risk. Kasi syempre, yung financial reports, ito yung basis ng mga management, ng top management for decision making. Syempre, kung mali yung financial reporting, mali din ang magiging decision ng mga top executives or ng board of directors. So, ibig sabihin, kapag mali yung kanilang decision, ibig sabihin, hindi na-attain ng internal control or ng control yung financial reporting objective ng internal control mismo. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Meron din tayong tinatawag na investment risk. So yung investment risk, syempre, kung mali yung nandoon. Yan. So mali yung nakalagay sa financial report. Yan. All right. Kung mali ang nakalagay sa financial report, ibig sabihin, mali din yung kanilang magiging investment decision. So lumalabas, merong investment risk related doon. Ayan. Okay. Ano pa? Pwede rin siyang masubject to compliance risk, 'di ba? Bakit kaya masubject siya sa compliance risk? Kasi may mga regulatory body. May mga regulatory body na kailangan ng reports na financial report ng isang organization. Kung hindi sila makakomply on time, pwede silang magbayad ng penalty. So sino-sino yung mga humihingi ng report ng isang organization? Ito yung SEC, BIR. So humihingi yan sila ng results ng operation. So, syempre, kung hindi maibigay on time, late filing na yon, may penalty na. So, subject to compliance risk. Ganun din sa compliance objective. Syempre, kapag hindi compliant ang isang organization, subject siya sa compliance objective. Compliance risk pala. So, subject siya sa compliance risk kasi hindi siya nakakomply with the existing laws, rules, and regulations. Sabihin natin kung marami silang na-retrench or tinanggal na empleyado this year kasi nga pandemic, hindi na nila kayang pasweldohin yung mga tao, kailangan mag-submit sila ng letter of retrenchment sa DOLE, sa Department of Labor and Employment. Kaso dahil sa sobrang busy nila, hindi na sila padala sa DOLE. So may penalty yon. So subject sila sa compliance risk. Sa BIR, 'di ba? Sa BIR hindi sila nakapag-file ng income tax return. So may compliance risk doon, may penalty doon. Sa SEC hindi sila nakapag-submit ng audited FS. So may penalty din doon kay SEC. So subject sa compliance risk. So syempre kailangan having a good internal control, 'di ba? Having a good internal control must possess the following satisfaction of this objective. So ano yung tatlong objectives ng isang internal control? Class? Yes, Erica. Ano yung tatlong objective?
Effectiveness and efficiency of operations, reliability of financial reporting, and compliance with applicable laws and regulations.
That's correct. No? So tama si Erica doon. So pag sinortcut natin, we have the operational objective, financial reporting objective, and compliance objective. So yan po yun. All right. Okay. So next. Yan. This is the internal control framework. Ito yung itsura ng internal control framework. This one is being proposed or being implemented by COSO. So what do we mean by COSO? What do we mean by COSO? Anyone from the class? Yes, Don Luis. Yes, Don Luis.
Sir, yung COSO po is Committee of Sponsoring Organizations po.
Yes, no? So, COSO means Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Treadway Commission. So, itong COSO na ito yung parang pinakasikat na organization na gumawa or nag-formulate ng kauna-unahang internal control framework. So, ang ginawa nila, they create an internal control framework structure na parang Rubik's Cube yung itsura. So, ayan. Ito yun. So, yung nasa taas, ito yung objective. Tatlong objective ng organization. Ayan. So, we have here the operational objective, financial reporting objective, saka compliance objective. Tapos, dito rin, binanggit nila in every objectives, kailangan masatisfy yung mga objectives in different levels. Entity-wide, diba? Is it an entity-wide objective or function, division-wide, operating unit, or functional-wide na objectives? So, syempre, from top to bottom approach or from bottom to top approach ang ginagawa ng internal control framework. So hindi lang siya applicable sa isang unit, applicable siya for the organization as a whole. Tapos syempre, to satisfy these objectives, kailangan mapag-aralan natin yung components of an internal control. So may tinatawag tayong components of an internal control. So 5 yon. Ayan, this one, control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, saka monitoring activities. So bakit kaya naka-cube? Bakit cube ang representation or pagkaka-present ng COSO regarding internal control framework? Anyone from the class? Bakit kaya ganito yung kanilang presentation? regarding internal control framework? Anyone? Meron kayang idea? Meron kaya kayong idea? Anyone from the class? Yes, Erica.
Sir, try lang po. Yung ano po, naka-Rubik's Cube po siya kasi po, yung kapag yung mga principles or concepts po ng bawat component, yung control environment and such po, pag in-apply po siya sa operations, reporting, and compliance, maa-achieve po yung effective internal control.
Yes, no? So tama po yun. Kasi we have to determine these components para ma-address properly. Ano yung mga dapat maging control measures, ano yung dapat ilagay in place, kasi iba-iba yung control in different situations. Kasi iba-iba rin yung control environment. So syempre, different control environment requires different control measures or control activities. Kasi iba-iba rin yung risk na nandoon. So that's why ganito yung kanilang presentation para maipakita na regardless whatever type of objective we are attaining to achieve, is it operational objective, financial reporting objective, or compliance objective, kailangan pag-aralan natin yung 5 components para doon. Tapos, is it applicable only sa functional unit, operational unit, division-wide, or entity-wide, yung internal control. Kasi internal control applies to all. Pero syempre dahil iba-iba ng control requirements, iba-iba rin yung control activities na dapat ilagay in place. Ayan. All right. Okay. So, let's go now sa control environment. Ayan. So, ito yung kauna-unahang component ng internal control. Why do we need to understand control environment? Bakit kaya, class? So, anyone from the class, bakit kaya natin dapat pag-aralan? Or why do we need to understand the control environment? Yes, Erica.
Para po maintindihan natin yung workplace environment, katulad po ng kung paano po naka-structured yung organization, paano po yung manner of leadership, tsaka yung management's operating style po.
Yes, that's correct, no? So, kaya natin pinag-aaralan yung control environment itself kasi doon natin makikita kung ano ba yung structure ng organization. Ano yung structure ng organization? Is it linear? Is it functional organization? So, doon natin malalaman paano yung magiging atake ng mga control. Yan, so structure of the organization. Kasi sabihin natin class, maglalagay tayo ng internal control process. So, ang approach natin for internal control process is palinear. Tuloy-tuloy siya. Ganun yung internal control natin. So, from 1, diba? From number 1, kapag okay na, sunod kay number 2. Kapag okay na kay number 2, number 3. Kapag okay na kay number 3, number 4. Diba? Kasi this type of approach is linear. Pero kapag pag functional kasi yung organization, pag ganito siya, di ba? So this one, meron silang mga different heads. Sabi natin, yung pinaka-head is president. Tapos yung president, meron siya mga vice president. So yan. So yung vice president, ayan. All right. So yung vice president 1, 2, and 3, Saka 4, iba-iba sila ng function. Although si Vice President 1 and 2, pwede sila mag-work at the same time. Si Vice President 1, meron din siyang mga uh, members. Meron siyang mga staff. Ayan. Alright, ganyan. Kasi Vice President 2, meron din siyang sariling staff. Vice President 3, may sarili rin siyang staffs. So, ganyan. Ayan. So, lagay natin dyan. So, ganyan yung itsura ng isang functional organization. Ayan. Tapos si Vice President number 4, meron din siyang sariling staffs niya. Ayan. Alright. So, lagyan natin dyan. Okay. So, yan yung mga example, kunwari, nung organizational structure. So, ito na si Vice President 1 and 2, meron pa silang joint committee. Tapos meron din silang joint members. So, either pwede sila mag-report kay Vice President 1 or Vice President 2. So, yan yung example ng functional organization. So, yung functional organization naman, yung iba kasi medyo dynamic yung functional organization. So, sabihin natin, this one, mula sa Vice President, ang tawag dyan, admin function. Yan. So, admin function. Yan. So, sila yung nakafocus sa administrative function ng business. And then dito naman sa operational functions for the second level. Yan. Tapos sa third one is just the day-to-day functions. Yan. So, yung una is linear structure ng organization. Yung ikalawa is functional structure ng organization. Siyempre, different structure ng organization requires different control procedures. Siyempre, dahil yung isa nagre-report sa dalawa or higit pang boss, hindi naman pwedeng lagay ka ng control dyan na pang-isahan lang. Kailangan dalawa, may check and balance. So, ganun po yung chine-check natin sa control environment. So, syempre, paano yung workplace? Sabihin natin, yung kay Vice President 1, siya yung HR. Diba? Si Vice President 1 ng HR. Vice President 2, siya yung finance. Vice President 3, siya yung marketing. Vice President 4, siya naman yung sa information and communication. Diba? Alright. So, yan po. Okay. Can you still hear me, class?
Yes po.
Yes po.
Yes po, sir.
Alright. Okay, class. So, yan. So, ito yung example ng organizational structure ng isang organization or isang business. Siyempre, dito sa organizational structure, check na rin natin ano yung setup or workplace ng bawat team members. So, syempre, through checking this organizational structure, magkakaroon na rin tayo ng overview na, ito kay puro HR work, HR task, ito finance, accounting, treasury, kung ano-ano pa. Nakukuha po ba? So, ganyan yun. So, that is one of the reason why we need to consider control environment. So, tulad ng sinabi kanina ni Erica, this refers to the workplace. So, pag control environment daw pala, it refers to the workplace of the organization. So, syempre, depende kasi sa organization kung gaano kalaki ang organization or hindi. Syempre, kapag maliit lang ang organization, yung iba, pare-pareho lang sila ng workplace. No? So, yung malaking organization naman, iba-iba sila ng workplace. Kasi iba-iba sila ng approach pagdating sa work nila, sa kanilang task. So ano pa? Dito rin natin mapag-aaralan kung ano yung approach ng mga leader. So, yung leadership skills, dyan din natin makikita. Ayan. Okay, so yan. For example, leadership skills. Kung i-check natin, magkakandak tayo ng uh, survey. Magkakandak tayo ng survey sa mga employees. Sabihin natin, bakit dito sa HR masaya lahat ng tao? Kaya sila masaya. Kasi okay yung leader nila, yung pinaka-head nila, yung head ng HR. Okay sa kanila. Bakit sa finance, sa accounting, parang relax lang? Kasi hindi relax lang din yung boss. Hindi sila masyadong masaya, hindi rin naman sila masyadong malungkot. Bakit sa marketing, parang lagi stressed yung mga tao, 'di ba? Kasi medyo authoritative yung kanilang leader. So lagi silang stress, 'di ba? Ganon. Sa IT, bakit sa IT laging fresh yung mga uh, tao doon? Kasi yung pinaka-head nila cool lang, medyo cool lang siya, wala namang problema, laging maayos lahat ng kanilang trabaho. So okay. So ganun 'yun. So syempre diyan makikita natin ano yung leadership style ng mga head per department. So yan diyan makikita din natin 'yan. All right. So meron pa po bang question regarding sa control environment? Can you still hear me, class? If you can hear me, please press number 1. All right. Okay. So medyo mabagal. Medyo mabagal pa yung mga estudyante ko. Parang hindi yata nakikinig. All right. Okay. So bago tayo mag-move sa isa pa, so let's discuss the last part of the control environment. Ano kaya yung mga 3 elements? Meron kasing 3 elements in a control environment. So, syempre may chine-check tayo dyan na 3 elements. Kasi ang tinitignan natin dito sa control environment, yung workplace, leadership, saka ano pa? Cultural values or organizational culture. So, tinitingnan din natin yung organizational culture nila. Ayan. Alright. Okay. So, syempre, kapag chine-check natin yung organizational culture ng isang organization in a control environment setup, chine-check natin yung relationship ng employees sa kanang organization itself. So, ano ba yung tingin ng mga employees sa organization nila? Okay ba? Is it good? Is it developing their career? Nahuhubog ba yung career nila or hindi? So kasama yon sa dapat nating tignan. Ano pa yung dapat nating tignan? Aside from the relationship of the employees and their organization. Siyempre, check rin natin yung hierarchical system of authority. Siyempre, sa hierarchical system of authority, doon makikita natin sino yung may authority, sino yung dapat masunod, sino yung pinaka-boss. Kasi doon natin malalaman, doon natin ma-check ano yung mga proper safeguarding measures or control measures na dapat natin ilagay in place para mas ma-okay yung internal control natin. At ano pa, yung general views ng employees about the organization. Siyempre, yung mga employee na yan, meron yan mga kanya-kanyang view pagdating sa organization. Ano ba yung view nila pagdating sa objectives ng organization? Is it attainable? Is it workable? Is it very ideal? Hindi realistic? So, syempre, doon natin malalaman kung ano yung response ng mga employees pagdating sa organization purpose goals nung organization. Ayan. All right. So we're done with the control environment. So next is the risk assessment. So bakit natin kailangan ng risk assessment? 'Di ba? I-assess yung risk. bakit natin kailangan i-assess yung risk? Di ba napag-aralan natin to? Risk assessment. Bakit kailangan i-assess yung risk? Anyone from the class? Yes, Erica.
Para po ma-identify yung risk at ma-rate po yung likelihood and impact of a risk event po.
Yes, no? So tama po 'yun. Kasi para ma-identify natin yung risk. So identify the risk. Kaya tayo nag-a-assess ng risk kasi we can identify. Mali, sorry. Yan, identify. Sorry. Ayan. So we can identify the risk. So identify, ano pa, measure and analyze the risk. So you can identify, measure. So kailangan din natin i-measure yung risk. Bakit natin kailangan i-measure yung risk? Siyempre, para ma-magnify natin gaano ba kalaki yung risk na nandoon, na involved doon sa particular transaction. Di ba sabi nga natin, the last time, yung business activity, meron niyang mga kanya-kanyang risk. Kasi yung mga business activities na to, sometimes it involves hazards. So, syempre, itong mga hazards na to, may mga kalakip yan na risk kapag hindi tayo naglagay ng proper internal control. So, that's why, kapag na-identify na natin, we need to measure the risk involved. Kasi, hindi tayo sure, baka malaki yung impact. Tapos, syempre, kapag na-measure na natin at na-identify, we have to analyze. We have to analyze bakit kailangan maalis or mawala, kailangan ma-delete, 'di ba? Or ang tawag doon, mabura or alisin doon sa process flow or ma-prevent sa internal control process flow itong mga risk na ito. Kasi depende 'yon sa risk appetite ng business or ng organization. So, yan, that is one of the reason why we need to assess the risk. Okay, control activities. Ano naman yung control activities? So ito yung pangatlong component ng internal control framework. Why do we need to check the control activities, class? Why do we need to check the control activities? Yes, Lexter.
Para po ma-check kung yung control po nila is effective po dun sa organization. Yun lang po, sir.
Para ma-identify kung yung control ba ay effective sa isang organization. So, yes, no? So, tama naman yun. Kasi, ano ba yung control activity? So, control activities are procedures. Diba? So, procedures ito. Ayan. So, lagyan natin dito. Control activities are procedures. Ayan. Procedures daw siya. Ayan. Procedures. Ano pa? Aside from procedure.
Policies po.
Analysis. Tama po ba?
Policies po.
Policies. Ayan. Procedures. Policies. So, ano pa? Yeah. So, procedure. It is a set of procedure, policies, manuals. Diba? So, yeah. So, lagyan natin dyan, manuals. Descriptions. Ayan. Descriptions. So, description din siya. Yeah. So, descriptions. Ayan. All right. So lumalabas, control activities may be defined in the form of procedures, policies, manuals, descriptions, etc. Kung saan naka-clearly incorporated yung mga processes. So, dito nakalagay yung mga processes, control processes. Ayan. So, lagyan natin. Ayan. Control processes. So, yung control processes na yon dahil naka-document, di ba? Naka-document yung control activities in the form of procedures, policies, manuals, saka descriptions. Yung control processes na yon is being documented. So, minsan kapag nagkakandak tayo ng audit, kapag nagkakandak tayo ng audit ng operational audit, we have to document the transaction kung tayo si auditor. So we need to document everything to assess if the internal control is really operating effectively and efficiently. So syempre, how can we document the control processes or control activities? Depende yon doon sa set na procedures, policies, manuals, and descriptions na meron doon sa internal control manual ng isang organization or ng isang company. Ayan. So, yung control activities normally, nakadepende siya doon sa control environment na meron sa isang organization. Siyempre, different control environment requires different control activities. Bakit? Kasi iba-iba yung risk na meron doon. That's why we need to assess the risk. Kasi we have to identify ano ba yung specific risk na meron sa ganitong control environment. Kung na-identify na natin, we have to measure, di ba, the risk. So na-identify na natin and then na-measure na natin yung particular risk for a particular control environment. So therefore, we can implement control activities that is fit for that control environment. So interrelated pala itong tatlo na to. So that's why we need to understand better the control environment, risk assessment, saka control activities. Information and communication. So ang information and communication is the fourth component of internal control framework under COSO. So bakit kailangan ng information and communication as a component of the internal control? Ano kaya ito? Anong function nito? Anong function kaya nito, class? Yes, Don Luis.
Sir, yung information naman po, so yung sa information po, need po ito para maging effective and successful po yung control na i-conduct po natin. Kasi po, need po ng information para po ma-assess kung relevant, yung relevancy or yung relevant po ng information or yung data na nakalap po natin. Kasi po kapag hindi po kasi ito reliable or hindi po ano yung na-gather nating information, ma-affect po ito sa accuracy at saka completeness ng ginawa po nating yon control po. Tapos yung sa communication naman po, need po ng communication. Parang ito po yung communication ng from the higher management to the ano po, parang stops sa stops po para need po ng communication para po ma-disseminate and yung direction din po ng yung pagda-direct po, ganun po.
That's correct, no? So tama po yan. Tama yung sinabi ni Don Luis. Kasi sa information, we need relevant data or relevant information. Kasi kapag hindi naging relevant ang information, lumalabas, outdated na yung information. Diba? So outdated. When we say outdated, ano po yun? When we say outdated, ano po yun, class? Ibig sabihin,
Di na po
hindi
siya
na
timely.
Yes, hindi na siya timely na information. So, hindi na siya relevant, hindi na siya kailangan. Baka kasi meron ng mas latest na information na dapat makakasolve or makaka-create ng bagong control processes. So, if we are using an outdated information, baka hindi na applicable yung magawa nating control framework or control processes. at baka hindi ma-address properly yung risk. Diba? So, that's why we need proper, relevant information. Pagdating naman sa communication, syempre kailangan properly communicated yung uh, information. Diba? Properly communicated yung information. Kasi kapag hindi properly communicated yung information, a delay in the communication of an information makes it not relevant or outdated. So, syempre, whenever there is a new information available, kailangan ma-communicate na siya agad-agad doon sa concerned organization or concerned unit. Alright, ayan, okay. So, ano pa kaya meron sa communication? So, sa communication, meron tayong dalawang klase. Internal communication, yan. Internal communication, saka external communication. So, ano naman yung internal communication? What is internal communication and then external communication? What is internal communication and external communication? Yes po.
Yung internal po, ano po siya? Within organization po siya.
Alright. So, tama si Jenny, no? So, pag sinabing internal, this is a communication within the organization. So, normally, sino-sino kaya yung nandoon sa internal communication from different departments? So, different flows siya. Communication flows from different departments. It could be hierarchical communication or cross-functional communication. So balikan ulit natin. Bakit siya relevant yung information and communication? Babalikan natin yung control environment. Di ba? Kapag linear yung structure ng organization, so hierarchical yung communication. Pwedeng top to bottom or bottom to top na communication. Kapag functional naman, pwedeng ang communication ay cross-functional from different departments nag-uusap. Pwedeng hierarchical kasi from top to bottom. So, syempre, any relevant information na meron sa isang department, tas kailangan ng isang department. Sabihin natin si HR may relevant information siya, kailangan ni finance or accounting. Kailangan ma-communicate agad ni HR yon kay accounting and finance para ma-consider na relevant yung information. So, syempre magamit agad-agad ng specific department. Otherwise, magiging outdated yung information. Yan. While yung external naman, these are communications that will cater both inward and outward flows. So, syempre, ang external, sabihin natin, this is the organization. Yan, organization, and then, yan, lagyan natin. This is the organization. Yan, lagyan natin ng bahay. And then, this is outside. Diba? Outsider. Yan, so, kapag, ang sabi daw, in external communications, may cater both inward. So, pag inward, galing sa outsider, papunta yung communication sa loob ng organization. So, inward communication yon. Kapag palabas naman, outward communication. So, outward flows na communication. So, normally, ito nanggagaling yung mga communication na yan sa mga regulatory bodies. Diba? Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po.
Yes,
Alright.
sir.
So, ganun po yung pinag-uusapan dito sa external. Well, sa internal naman, it could be a hierarchical communication or cross-functional communication within an organization. So sabihin natin yan, ito yung organization, dyan lang sila. Dyan yung exchanges ng information. So that's why we need to understand also the information and communication, how the information flows within an organization or outside of an organization or going inside an organization. Siyempre, kasama na rin doon yung communication. Last one is monitoring. Bakit kailangan ng monitoring? Why is it considered as fifth component of the internal control framework? Anyone from the class? Yes, Leila.
Siyempre po, kailangan po nating i-monitor para po malaman natin if yung mga bago po ba nating i-apply na rules para po ma-prevent yung risk is effective na po siya rather than sa ginagawa po ng management previously.
Yes, that's correct. No? So tama yon. Kasi we need to monitor kung meron bang progress. Meron bang progress? Ayan, lagyan natin. Kung meron bang progress doon sa ginagawa na process. Kung wala kasing progress, kailangan malaman nung pinaka-head ng organization or nung mga top executive. Is there a progress or wala? Kung meron, so go ahead. Just continue to make it more better, to make it better. Kapag wala, ano kaya yung magiging corrective action? Ano kaya yung magiging corrective action na pwedeng i-implement? So that's why we need to have a monitoring activities. Yeah, so corrective action. All right, corrective actions. Yeah, so sinusulat ko muna. Ayan. All right. So hanggang 3 o'clock lang tayo na class. Tama po ba?
Yes.
Yes po, sir.
Alright. May klase na kayo. May klase kayo after neto?
Wala naman
Wala
po.
po.
Wala naman.
Wala
Sige,
po.
okay lang. Ituloy ko na lang siya. Patapos naman na tayo. Alright. So, yun yung sa monitoring activity. So, alam na natin yung 5 components ng internal control. So, balikan natin dun sa cube. Ito yung 5 components. First one is control environment. Second one is risk assessment. Third one is control activities. Fourth, information and communication. And then last is monitoring activities. Ito, hindi na natin ito masyadong pag-aaralan kasi ito naka-focus ito sa internal audit mismo na subject. Although, kasi ito ay very specific na yan. Ano yung mga dapat gawin sa entity-wide entity-wide perspective, division-wide perspective, operating unit perspective, saka functional unit perspective. Ano yung mga specific activities or process or procedures, ano yung specific risk, control environments, doon per perspective ng organization. So yan po. Alright, so alam na natin yung 5 component. Let's go with the other internal control frameworks. So ito yung other internal control frameworks. If we go back doon sa una natin, di ba sa una natin we have what we called COSO framework. So yung ginawa natin kanina is COSO framework, di ba? Tama po ba? Yeah,
Yes,
so COSO framework yung nandoon. Alright, so ano yung COSO framework? What do we mean by COSO? Committee of Sponsoring Organization. So yung COSO framework, ito yung pinakasikat na framework ng internal control. Yeah. COSO, internal control framework. Yung pangalawa naman na pinakasikat is tinatawag natin COCO, internal control framework. So what do we mean by COCO internal control framework?
Criteria of control po.
Yes, that's correct, no? Criteria of control framework. So sa criteria of control framework, actually same lang sila with COSO. Kung anong itsura ni COSO, parang ganun din kay COCO. Only that, saan naka-focus si COCO? Anyone from the class? Saan naka-focus si Coco? Meron po bang nakakaalam? Kung saan kaya
Sir, sabi po, more participative po and less hierarchical po.
So, more on participative na. So, more participative kasi naka-focus siya sa behavioral, di ba? Behavioral and mechanical perspective or aspect ng uh, internal control. While yung COSO kasi is more on procedural. Diba? Procedural approach. While si Coco is behavioral and mechanical. Doon siya nakafocus rather than being procedural. However, yung framework niya itself, pareho lang. Kung ano yung itsura ng cube, ganun din yung yung objective ni Coco. Ano yung objective ba ni Coso? Operational objective, financial reporting objective, compliance objective. Ganun din kay Coco. So, yun din yung kanyang objective. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po.
Alright. Kung mapapansin nyo, si Coso, ang nag-adapt niyan si American Institute of Certified Public Accountant. While si Coco naman, ang nag-adapt niyan, si Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants. So, sila naman yung adapt ng ganyang framework. Although yung pinakasikat talaga si COSO. Ano pa yung ibang internal control frameworks na alam natin? Anyone from the class? Meron pa? Meron tayong tinatawag na ISO. ISO framework. So yung ISO framework naman, ito na yung international standardization. Yan. Standardization organization. So ISO framework, same lang rin siya with COSO, although mas enhanced na ito. Ito yung uso ngayon yung mga kailangan ISO certified yung isang organization like si RTU, di ba ISO certified siya? So ISO, I think ISO 2005 ata yung kanya. So 2005 stands for documentation. Ibig sabihin, considered as okay si RTU pagdating sa documentation process. Parang yun yung sinasabi. While yung iba naman, ISO 14,000 refers to environmental compliance. So, iba-iba ng ISO number, iba-iba ng compliance certification. So, yun yung ISO framework. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba?
Opo.
Opo, sir.
Ayun. So, yung mga examples, so lagay natin dito. Ayan. Pag ISO 2000, lagay natin yan, 2005. Actually, 2005 to 2007, yun yung documentation, certification. ISO 9000, normally sa quality management. Yan, quality management. ISO 14,000, environmental. Ayan, environmental management. ISO 3,600, it focuses on country code management. Tapos, ISO 26,000. So I think that's 26,000. It focuses on social responsibility or CSR, corporate social responsibility. So yan yung mga example ng ISO framework. So syempre paiba-iba. Ayan. Alright. Okay. Ano pa yung iba, class? Meron pa po ba tayong alam na iba? Meron tayong tinatawag na COVID na framework. So ano naman yung COVID framework? Normally itong COVID framework, nakafocus ito sa IT audit. So related siya more on auditing and information technology setup. So yun yung IT framework. So di ba ngayon nauuso ngayon yung data privacy. Na aware kayo doon sa data privacy? Di ba every time na meron kayong pinipirmahan kay RTU or may binibigay sa inyong Google form, may nakasulat doon ng data privacy consent?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ayun. So, dahil doon sa data privacy or security ng data, nagkaroon ng COBIT framework. So it focuses on the IT security and IT audit. All right. So these are the normal internal control frameworks na meron tayo or ginagamit natin. Pero yung pinakasikat, yung COSO. So yun lang, class. So thank you so much again, class, for joining our class discussion. I hope that I can see you again next meeting. So please continue answering your uh, week 3 and week 4 assignments. So class dismissed. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po,
Po,
sir.
sir.
Thank you po, sir. God bless po.
Thank you po.